Parenting is one of the most rewarding things we can do as humans, but sometimes it can be the one thing that ends up challenging us the most. And today we're going to be talking to publicist Mikkelson of The Creative Edge and his family's journey with special needs parenting. Don't go away, we will be right back. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, I'm your host, Bridget Limbanda from Cape Town in South Africa. Parenting is one of the most exhilarating journeys any person can undertake, and it can also be one of the most challenging things we can do. Today, we're going to take a look at the journey of Mikkelson and his family in Canada about their journey with special needs parenting. But before that, my co-host is Mary Elizabeth Jackson. She's a special needs and disabilities advocate and also the award-winning author of the children's Publicist book series. Mary, welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you today?
I'm very well, very well. Can't complain. Thank you.
Oh, good. Well, a day without complaints is a winning day, isn't it? For sure.
Absolutely. And so we want to say a warm welcome to our community, those who are watching us on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Periscope, on Twitter, and of course on YouTube. I'm in Cape Town in South Africa. Mary is in Nashville in the USA. So do let us know in the comments where you are joining us from. And so Mikkelson is a book publicist, but he's also the father of a 13-year-old high-functioning autistic daughter with a learning disability and ADHD. In order to get their daughter the help that she needed, they had to uproot their family life and relocate to an area where they could get help for her. So let's welcome Mickey to the show so we can hear a bit more about their family's journey, shall we?
Yes.
Mickey, welcome to the show.
Thank you both for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, thank you, Mickey. Yes, great intro, huh?
Amazing intro. Just you're both incredible, and this show's amazing.
Oh, thank you. Do you feel special?
I do. I felt special when I first talked to you about this, but even more so now that it's actually happening. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Great to have you here. So, Mickey, tell us a bit about that first moment when you realized that you were going to be a special needs parent. Now, parenting in itself is an overwhelming feeling, when you first hold that baby in your arms and you kind of think, oh my goodness, I'm responsible for an entire life, for another human being. It's no longer just about me. How did that feel for you, that moment when you realized that you've actually got a lot more on your plate than you may have thought you've had?
Yeah, it's a good question. And first and foremost, I want to say that we felt blessed initially because we weren't supposed to have children, actually. There was 99% chance that our daughter would not be born into this world. And when that happened, that we actually ended up getting her and finding out that she was ultimately autistic, we were like, this is the hand that we were given. At first we looked at it as maybe this is a disability, but then realizing that it's really not a disability. It's our daughter's special. and the things that she does on a daily basis just opens our eyes up to new worlds. And that started ultimately, obviously, from her lining up her stuffed animals when she was like age 4, and just seeing different perspectives that we never saw, knowing that she was different, but not pinpointing or finding out what those reasons or what it was. And that was probably the biggest challenge for us.
So I back to what Bridgetti's saying, because I did want to know this also. When did you notice that you knew there was something different? And for most parents, for a lot of times, there are cases that we know there's something, we just don't really know what it is because we're not an expert on this. And we end up having to educate ourselves to learn what's actually going on with our child. And every time it happens for a parent, there's a lot of times it seems to be the same particular age, but then there are different ages for parents. So was it around age 4 that you started to go, so I kind of see a couple of things, but I'm not really sure about it?
We thought it was age 4, to be honest, but then it really wasn't reinforced for us until she was in kindergarten. And there was gaps in how she was identifying with teachers, other students in preschool, things that she was doing. And that's what really pinpointed us to say, okay, there's something going on here. Let's find ways to address that, which we ultimately did. So that's how it all started for us.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. Sorry, I can't hear.
Yeah, we can't hear Bridgetti.
Okay, thanks.
I think it's nice that you kind of realized, this is what we have and how do we move forward? Because I think a lot of parents sort of go into this total shock and they become frozen in that moment and find it very difficult to move forward from there. So how did you start looking at resources that could empower you as parents?
We ended up getting a learning coach to meet with our daughter in Saskatchewan, because that's where we're living. And keep in mind that Saskatchewan does not have an autism program. They don't have a disability program. We're in a small town. So we ended up getting a learning coach first and foremost to meet with Ezra and meet with us on a consultation basis. It turns out this learning coach actually has 3 autistic children of her own. And so talking with Ezra and understanding what she had, she's not obviously, she can't code our daughter or say that our daughter was autistic, but just from life skills and experience herself, she's like, she's going to be autistic. I just can't code her for you. And so because there is no resources in Saskatchewan, we actually ended up moving to Alberta as a result of all of this. And that's when we got her coded and meeting with a psychologist and getting her some support in schools and stuff. So it was a trek. It was a hard battle, to be honest, because we didn't know what we were looking at. We didn't know what we were facing. We didn't understand the meltdowns when we didn't put her clothes out a certain way. We didn't understand the meltdowns when teachers said she could do a pattern, but the pattern was wrong. So there was some struggles there for sure.
Yeah. Will you tell people, like, what are the things that you saw? Because there are so many varying degrees of things that children do, but then there are a lot of similarities. So will you tell people, like, some of the other things that you saw in your daughter? And so to clarify, where you are in Canada, coding must mean the same thing as getting a diagnosis for a child in the States.
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And it's interesting, but so I think it's interesting to be able to understand and learn the different languages and different countries and parts of our world, because this does affect so many families, So what you said, she would have meltdowns. The way you put her clothes on, does she have texture sensitivity to fabrics and foods? And did she, okay. And as a child, were you able to get her past, I don't know how you guys do food there, but I know we have like 1, 2, 3 levels of the Gerber baby food, for littles. So did you get to a point where there were certain textures, and if it was too much this or too much that, she just would not have it all, she wouldn't eat it?
Yeah, that still actually happens. I don't know. And I don't know how many items of clothing that we've had to either return in the 13 years that as our daughter's been around, but we've had to return multiple clothes. And we've actually found that used clothing has actually been her preference because she doesn't have the new tags on it. There's lots of fabrics that she won't like or feel. In terms of food, there's definitely things there as well. But the indication of how things were going for us initially was, first and foremost, the lining up of toys in a certain single line, or pillows or stuffed animals. That was a big indicator for us as well. And then understanding that everything was on routine. So when I referenced the clothes thing, if we didn't put our clothes out in a certain line, 2 socks together, pants, and then shirt, that was fine. But the minute we moved the shirt to the second line and the pants first, there'd be a meltdown. Or if there was a sock missing out of the 2 socks lined up, there'd be a meltdown as well. So we knew that something was definitely going on, because any movement from a routine for her always created a meltdown. And that was typically a 3 to 4 hour meltdown.
I'm so sorry. And that's not just a spoiled child, because there are people who, when they don't really have an understanding of this, it's the parent's fault and you've spoiled your child. And what they don't understand, it really is not that. It's about the inability to be flexible, and there's that rigidity there, and that transition it's just not possible for these kiddos. And it really doesn't have to do with spoiling a child.
For sure. And the other obstacle for us, another reason why we moved to Alberta, beyond getting coded or diagnosed, I guess is the word you use in the States, but we live in a small town and no one understood what our daughter was about. And so we were kind of backlash from that aspect. No one understood our kids. No one would take the time to get to know our kids, because she obviously had something different, but no one could understand or face what that was. So it got much better when we did move to Calgary, which is where we moved, but just the community didn't understand either. And I think there's still a lot of that actually in the world, where people who don't have autistic children don't understand what us as parents deal with on a daily, monthly, year basis.
Yeah.
What is it that you would like, parents to know to make them less judgmental? Because I think that is the problem. People are often judgmental. You have a kid in the store that's having a meltdown, or in the theater, or wherever, and people, the first thing they do is kind of stare at you. Bad parent is what people think. What is it that you'd like parents to know about situations like that in public?
Well, I think it goes beyond parents, though, Brigetti. And I mean, as for parents who have autistic children who maybe see things as doom and gloom, I would caution them not to see it that way. I would caution them to look at it as more of a blessing, because autistic children have a lot of value in this world. They think differently, yes, but they see things in a different light. And if you can find ways to leverage that light, you're going to have children who are going to be basically beneficial to society. From a public standpoint, here's an example of something. We were in the store maybe 2 months ago. We were at the grocery store, and our daughter was with us, and she was stimming and she was doing some things. And the clerk, is your daughter okay? Like, there's something going on with her. I'm like, oh. And I said, well, she's autistic. And the clerk comes back and says, well, she doesn't look autistic. And so my wife goes, oh, well, can you tell us what autism looks like then? And I mean, that's just part of it. But I think that people really need to educate themselves on what this is, and understand that it's not a disease. It's not a disability. It's just a different way of life. And the minute that people start realizing that aspect is when society as a whole is going to be able to understand and embrace these wonderful kids and people for what they are.
Amen. And I really I love what you said. I think it needs to be a hashtag. I think it needs to be a quote. Leverage their light. That is a very, very powerful statement. I've not heard it. I don't know that I've ever heard somebody say it exactly like that, but I really love that you said it, Mickey. I think it's a beautiful way to interpret the way their brains are wired. And something that people out there don't understand is that, you don't have to have a child who has what are visual full-blown disabilities to have issues like being in a wheelchair, or completely nonverbal, or they have a hard time walking. I mean, those are all very challenging in themselves. But when you have a child who cannot transition and cannot, and who's very rigid, and you have someone having meltdowns for 3 and 4 hours, and there doesn't seem to be be anything that works for that child, then, I mean, those stresses that brings into the home, and even for that child, think about that physical body going through hours and hours of crying and screaming, and whether they're thrashers and they bang their heads and stuff, that in itself presents a whole different level of stress to have to deal with in life. And they're physically moving around and they're yelling and screaming. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's any easier to deal with. And I think people don't really understand what that's like to go through. I do know there's a higher rate of divorce, in single parenting that happens in families with kids with disabilities and special needs. And I also believe, and I've had this my experience myself, you're just talking about the experience yourself of being judged and being almost like I don't want to use the word blackballed, but there are groups I've been in where the parents, it's like, if your kid, you may not have this, your child doesn't have the same thing that somebody else's child does, and you may be having a hard day. Somebody else might criticize you because your kid doesn't have as bad a situation as their child does. There's a lot of judgment that happens, I have found, in some of these communities of parents with kids with challenges. And it's like, hey, we are kind of all in this, we're all in this together. It's just like our world. We're all in this together, no matter what color we are, no matter what we look like, no matter what we believe in or what foods we eat. We're still having an experience. We're still breathing the same air. We're still under the same sun and the same sky.
So, Mickey, how has this affected you? Your marriage, your relationship. Has it made you stronger in a sense? Has it challenged you?
It's been challenging for sure, but again, because we weren't even supposed to have kids, we're looking at it as a blessing in disguise, to be honest. And the fact that our daughter is just the way she is, it's so special. We actually ended up, because we didn't know how to face this, we actually took like a parents counseling group course to understand and make sure that it was vital that we'd be on the same page with everything, especially with everything that was happening between the meltdowns and the academic aspect dropping and the social aspect too. All of those things were slightly decreasing, and part of it was because we didn't understand what was going on. So we made the conscious effort to take a counseling course together to make sure that we were on the same page and to understand that we're in this battle together, not separate. And the family unit was ultimately so important, but even more important for us. And it's still that way today, to be honest. So, yeah.
So how did you deal with how's it affected your social life, your extended family life, because that's another dynamic, and how has it affected your work life?
Work life, it hasn't affected me too much. I've had to juggle schedules because I work a full-time job as well as being a publicist part-time. So I adjust my schedules from that aspect. Social levels, initially when our daughter was younger, 6, 7, 8 years old, it was a lot harder to do things because we didn't want to leave her with anybody else, because the risk of something happening that would set her off that other people wouldn't know about or what to do. So we didn't go out for quite a bit unless we took our daughter with us. And again, being judged in movie theaters, and I think you said that, Mary, things like that, being judged in restaurants, all of that. So, but end of the day, it's stay positive and work through it. I mean, these are the hands that people are dealt sometimes. And if you don't turn it to a bright side, it's going to wear you down and kill you ultimately.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you touched on an important thing that you said there. Parenting is completely different with children like this. And people come across as helicopter parents, and it's not completely 100% that. It's that, like you said, if your child melts down, if they have some issue, if they do something that somebody with them does not know how to handle, it can really be a bad situation. So it makes parents like us almost afraid to leave our kids with someone else. When you have a child who's nonverbal, I mean, I think that's one of the biggest fears of people who have nonverbal children is leaving them with other people. I mean, I had my own experience with my own daughter in public school, and it's a parent's nightmare. So what else is there for us to do as parents? We have to take care of our kids. They are our sole responsibility. We are their advocates, but we also have to learn to find people who are supportive, and that we can trust with our kids, because we want to make sure that they don't even injure someone else. That can happen.
Mm-hmm. Agree. And I think it's really important too to make sure that as parents, you're the identifier and you're the one that's managing the relationships. And what I mean by that is making sure that you're fully involved in the schools, having talks with teachers, especially if they're in public school, making sure that you're advocating for your child, because disability, it's not a disability, but they are different. And even schools sometimes have a hard time understanding that. And so you have to advocate for them all the way through academics, through social interactions with their friends as parents, and give understanding all the way through. Because if you don't do that, they're never going to get what they need from all areas of life. That's my opinion.
Mickey, if you had to look back at your journey so far, having the knowledge that you had now, what advice would you give to parents, new parents that are just embarking on this journey of raising a special needs child? What advice would you give to them looking back at your own journey so far?
I think for me, the first thing I would be doing if I was to turn things over, I hope I'm answering your question this way, but I think it would be important to get as much research as possible if you suspect something's wrong, and get help as soon as you can get it. I mean, if the child's lining up boxes, or if they're crying unneedlessly because of something that set them off, and the parent is not sure what that is, I would start research early and often. We waited too late, to be honest, or else we would have caught the situation quicker than we did. But if there's something wrong, get help right away in some way, shape, or form, and do the research to get that done, and make sure it's the right help.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power, definitely, with this situation, because the more knowledge you have, the better services your child will get, the better recovery the chance they have to overcome their challenges, and just get to that place where you really hope that they will be. And then that support system, whoever their therapists are and stuff, that place they hope your kids can be too, because we want them to live the fullest life they possibly can.
Yeah, it's all about sacrifices. I mean, an example of that, too, is we have a therapy cat to help our daughter with social interaction. My wife's allergic to cats. My wife's allergic to animals. And we've had this cat for 6 years. And the reason we did that is, well, she takes pills for the allergies, and because our daughter needed that interaction. And when we got that animal, her interaction skills got way better. She feeds this animal. She changes the litter. She plays with this cat. And it's only helping her identify with her friends now. And that's just one of the few sacrifices we have to make, but it's a good example of what needs to happen as parents, right? So.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is awesome. I love that. So did you guys choose? That's a good question. I've not heard of a therapy cat, but I know people who have therapy dogs. So I didn't even know they were doing therapy cats, honestly. So were you guided in that direction, or that's the animal of her choosing?
Cat was animal of her choosing, and I'm not sure she's a registered therapy cat, Mary, but for us, she's a therapy cat because she seems to sense when our daughter's off. When our daughter is sleeping and we sometimes try to wake her up, our cat will hiss at us because she knows our daughter needs that sleep.
Wow.
Anytime there's food that needs to happen, our daughter feeds her, and our cat will not leave the bowl area until she's actually been fed, which is a training tool. So I don't know if she's a licensed therapy cat. I suspect not, because we got her from a shelter. But at the same time, she acts just like a human, and she can sense when there's something wrong with her kid. And she'll go to her in those instances. Meltdowns happen way less now than they used to.
Wow.
And that
is amazing. That is amazing. Mm-hmm. Whose advice was it to get the cat for her?
I read up on some stuff, and she seemed to interact more with cats and dogs. And actually, when we told her we're getting a cat, and she was about, I think, 7, and we told her that mom's allergic, but we're going to do this, she actually went to the computer and started researching all these hypoallergenic breeds. And she gave us a list of the top 10. And she goes, okay, Dad, here's the list of the top 10. We should look at these 10 so it doesn't affect Mom. Ultimately, we end up getting one that does affect her, but that's beside the point. That's what autistic kids do, right? They research stuff. So.
That's
wow, that was amazing. That is amazing, and that's why I calling them differently abled to me is a lot more apt. Instead of saying disabled, because they're not able, they're differently able. They do things differently, and it's just amazing. I think they never cease to amaze you at the things that they come up with. The way that they reason things. And I always come back to this whole theory about education and the way we approach it. It's not out of the box thinking. It's like kicking the box and just thinking completely differently for your situation and accepting it for what it is, and not trying to box the way we do things or the way we approach things, and just being completely open is what it's about. What are the things you learned about yourself in this process?
Part of what you just said, actually, being open and understanding that our daughter's different. You can't teach her or you can't parent her the way you would a normal kid, because I found out the hard way that those normal parenting skills, they never worked with her. So you have to get on side of how her brain thinks and then adjust your parenting accordingly to that. And that could change on a daily basis too. What works one day will not work the second day. So you have to be leveraged and you have to be adaptable and go that route.
Oh, it's so true, Mickey. It's so hard. And that's why you almost need a toolbox with different things that you can do with your child, because you're right. I mean, one day this works. And even for kids who don't sleep, you may find that special remedy that works one day. I don't know, you ate dinner, you went for a walk, you read a book, and then took a shower, and they went to bed, and they finally slept. And then you try the next day, and it doesn't work. So it is on some sides a little maddening, but we also have to be adaptable ourselves to try to continue and then find that those ingredients that really work for our child, and you're going to have more success with it than you're going to be frustrated, for sure.
Absolutely. Our kid doesn't sleep either, Mary. It's okay.
Oh, 2, my 3
a.m. I mean, YouTube's her saving grace for that. But that worked out too, because now she has her own YouTube channel and she's making her own videos, like creating them. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, she just did a Pride video actually, because she's all about advocating for LGBT aspects. So that's one thing that we're doing with her. We're encouraging her to do that. Anything that they funnel on, encourage it. That's another piece of advice, because
as long as it's legal. I always say as long as it's legal.
As long as it's legal.
Legal and safe, then it's good, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, wow.
That is amazing that she's found some way to sort of channel her energy and her creativity. And I think it's wonderful that you as parents have decided to sort of have her back, and the fact that she knows you've got her back and encourage her in the direction that she's interested in. And not sort of forcing her in a direction that she may not want to go. But I love the fact that you highlighted, that you've got to have an agile approach to life. You can't be rigid. You can't have the kind of routine that you would have in normal parenting, because in normal parenting skills, routine is of the utmost importance. They want that sort of regularity, but you've got to be agile in the approach to special needs parenting and just adapt to what it is they need in that moment.
Yeah, especially whatever their routine is, how rigid they are. We have to adapt to that. They don't really adapt to us. We're adapting to them, which is really, really kind of the way it is, without letting them be the boss and in charge of everything, right? So it's this whole balancing thing that we have to do.
For sure. I tried to be rigid when I originally was doing all this, and it failed miserably. So I had to be the one to adapt, and I did that. So
right. We just put a big old face by rigid, trying to control my kid. You kidding me? Right.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Nikki, unfortunately, we're out of time. I can't believe the 30 minutes have gone so quickly. But any final word from you on being a parent, a special needs parent?
Yeah, just be patient. And again, I've said this word a lot, but be adaptable and be open to understanding that if you have an autistic child, they're going to think differently than other kids. So embrace them, love them, coach them, but do it in ways that don't follow the traditional sense.
Right. Amen.
I think that's a good note on which to end the show. Thank you so much to everyone who's joined us. Mickey, how can people reach out to you? How can they connect with you?
Through my publicity company, Creative Edge, which my daughter picked the name and the logo for, but the website's www.creative-edge.services, and you can find me there.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us. It's a big pleasure. Thank you very much. And thanks to all our viewers who watched us live today and those on the replay. And we'll see you again. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.